California Republican and California Democratic Party, quite frankly, aren't very strong party organizations at all. They can't enforce anything on any of us. We win our elections based on who we are, the strength of our arguments, and we're going to the people. This isn't a machine state, thankfully, and I don't see it becoming one anytime soon. I think that the idea of giving a voice to decline to states is probably the best thing that is in this, because when we look at Californians, those are the ones that are shut out. But the core of this issue for everybody, and it's one of the things we enjoy being in this horseshoe, is that this is a nonpartisan body. And I know that's not what's before us, but if we're serious about making the state legislature something that responds to everybody, the real solution would be not to put Democrats and Republicans in charge and appointees that come from those parties in charge of this process, because that's only a step or two removed from partisanship. It would be to remove partisanship from the state legislature, because in Dennis Zine's district, who happens to be registered as a Republican, he and I work together. We don't check our party credentials when we get together on an important issue like immigration. When Mr. Smith and I get together on an issue like the environment, we can't not talk to each other because one's a Republican and one's a Democrat. Otherwise, we're kind of tinkering around the edges. I know that's not what's before us today, but to somehow believe that the partisanship will be dispelled by a handful, potentially, of less partisan seats that come forward, we still know there will be a Democratic speaker, or in some scenarios, potentially a Republican speaker, who will enforce party unity, who will make sure very clearly that that partisanship is part of those in-between years, those 2 years of how business gets done. That does not change here. And I'm not willing to risk, with the friends that I sat down with, and we listened to arguments on both sides, but the friends on one side, on the voter rights battles that have been fought, I'm not willing to risk those for a handful of seats that really wouldn't change the system. But where I think we can agree is, what do we get together so we don't have a third to almost half of voters in California totally disenfranchised because they happen to have a representative from the minority party. They have zero voice in Sacramento. The voice is ignored, or it's only in playing defense around a budget time, which is a destructive exercise, because it's the one moment the minority party can exercise its power, but only in a negative way. So if we're serious about doing that, I think that is the reform that is the heart of this. Otherwise, this is something that's tinkering around the edges, and in my opinion, unfortunately in a dangerous way, because of that last piece that doesn't guarantee, to my satisfaction, what would happen around the voter rights that exist and the hard-fought districts. When you look at those districts, they are difficult cut districts in some cases. I don't know about Marina Del Rey, but some of those reflect the disenfranchisement of decades of many groups of interest in this state. And for me, that is the thing that tips it. But I do think that if we all are serious about that reform, we should stop talking about, who's going to appoint the redistricting, which is important, but ultimately doesn't get to the core of reform. What would do that is whether we have a partisan system at the state or not.
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon, followed by Mr. Smith.
Members, when I first came to City Council, I remember sitting down with Marvin Browdy, and he said, I give you 2 pieces of advice. I'll share with you one of them. One of them was, follow the money. Where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from in this campaign? The fact of the matter is, out of $6.3 million contributed to support this, almost 2.5 million is coming from Governor Schwarzenegger. In addition, the new majority, which is a PAC for a bunch of old Republican hacks, has contributed 150,000 here, 25,000 here, 18,750 here, 18,750 there. This is not a Citizens of California driven initiative. It is a measure sponsored by the Republican Party because they have a small piece of the legislature. They want to have 5 votes out of 14 and equal the Democrats 5 votes out of 14. Why should the Democrats have 30% representation when they have far greater representation of the public? In terms of representing minorities, excuse me, but don't listen to us. Don't listen to the City Council. Listen to the people who fight for the rights of minorities. Listen to the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Listen to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Listen to the Asian Pacific American Legal Center. These are the people that fight and champion the rights of minorities, and they say this is a bad proposal. These are the ones, by the way, who challenged the city of Los Angeles, who challenged the state legislature on their redistricting process, and they're the ones who will do it again if they screw it up. But the fact of the matter is, this is not the way to fix a broken machine. The problem is that this is a take it or leave it proposal by the Republican Party, sponsored by Governor Schwarzenegger, because he can't get the votes he wants in the legislature. I urge you to vote against this measure, vote no. Supporting my motion is a vote to bring reason to the discussion about redistricting. We do need to improve it, but this is not improvement. We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as I said.
Mr. Cardenas, followed by Mr. Smith.
Well, I'd just like to point out one thing. Many things have been said, but with all due respect to appointed bodies, look at all of the appointed bodies in the state of California. And you don't have to look very long or beyond a handful. Look at all of them. And you're going to find and see that they are woefully lacking in having minorities on those boards. They're woefully lacking on having women on those boards. And they're woefully lacking on having blue-collar, your everyday working folk on those boards. And I can guarantee you this, if this were to pass, you're going to have another board of people with all of this power who are going to come from the upper crust of California. They're going to come from the more wealthy corners of California, and they're very likely going to be connected to the most powerful people in California that people are saying that they want out of this system. So, with all due respect, when you look at California today and the redistricting that has been happening out of the state legislature from the hands of politicians, oh my God, politicians have been drawing the lines of districts in California. But yet at the same time, we have more diversity today than ever before in California history when it comes to elected officials, when it comes to women. Yes, even Republican women have now been elected to the legislature. And Democrat women, and minorities and minority women. We now have people who are openly gay in the legislature, more than one. That has only happened most recently in the last couple of redistrictings. And the last redistricting was actually done by people in this room. And we have more diversity. We have more equality. And that's what democracy is. We're never going to have something